That's one fine-looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that? Ah! Why must life be so hard? Why must I fail in every attempt at masonry? Ah!
On the 20th of March 2021, Queen's Park beat 10-man Stranraer 3-0. Nothing out of the ordinary, but with the context that this was to be the last league game played at Hampden, a place that Queen's Park have called home since 1903, it was a special occasion. Since then, Queen's Park have played more games at Ochil View, Falkirk Stadium, Fir Hill, and Hampden again than at their purpose-built Lesser Hampden Stadium. So, what is going on? Why have Queen's Park been allowed to build a stadium and then not use it? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we'll be looking at, as we look into multiple ground shares, the dealings between the SFA and Queen's Park, and what their plans were and are for Lesser Hampden. First, some history. The current Hampden is actually the third Hampden, with the first one being on Hampden Terrace, hence the name, the second one being what is now Hampden Park, before the current one in Mount Florida was opened in 1903. For over 100 years, the stadium was primarily the home of Queen's Park, but also housed the Scottish Football Association, hence why the national team plays there, and not in Edinburgh, making Scotland part of a select few nations in which the national football stadium is not in the country's capital. In case you are wondering, those countries that don't have the national stadium in their capital are Bahrain, Burundi, Colombia, Iraq, Pakistan, St. Lucia, Taiwan, Chinese Taipei, Turkey, and Venezuela, not including nations like Australia and the United States who move their games around the nation, or Switzerland who don't have a capital city. The thing with Hampden was that it was owned by Queen's Park and was leased by the club to the SFA. There was a point, however, where the SFA were contemplating leaving Hampden, as the lease was due to expire in 2020. Usually, these leases have just been renewed without much fuss, but this time it was different. In 2018, the SFA held talks in Murrayfield in Edinburgh about moving there. Of course, there are many arguments for moving to Murrayfield, such as ease of access when it comes to public transport, as whilst yes, Hampden does have Kings Park and Mount Florida stations, Murrayfield has the trams right outside and Haymarket Station, which is a major rail interchange, making it easier for people from the east side of Scotland to get home. There is the other argument of Murrayfield being a rugby stadium and being somehow worse to watch football at than Hampden, so with that in mind, the SFA elected to stay in Glasgow. Instead of just renewing the lease, however, a different deal was proposed. The SFA would pay Queen's Park £5 million, along with taking up the £19 million worth of liabilities from the redevelopment for the Commonwealth Games. This, for a League Two club, was massive, even more so when the club was still at the time an amateur outfit. But this left another question. Where would Queen's Park play now? As part of the deal to buy Hampden, £3 million from the previously mentioned £5 million would be spent on the nearby Lesser Hampden, which at the time was a pitch with a running track around it, along with a clubhouse owned by Queen's Park. This deal was made in September 2018, so at this point the club would have started making plans on redevelopment on Lesser Hampden. The next big moment for Queen's Park, however, would be on the 14th of November 2019, where, after a vote by club members, the club announced they would be turning professional. The following January, Ray McKinnon would be appointed manager, and then when the summer came, under COVID conditions, they would bring in effectively a whole new squad. 5 players from the Championship, 3 players from League One, Simon Murray on a free after he left Dundee United. It's no wonder then that Queen's Park romped to the title, winning 17 of their 22 games, finishing on 54 points. 16 clear of Edinburgh City, Elgin City and Stranraer, who all finished on 38 points. What a title race that would have been, by the way. The following season, Owen Coyle would bring Championship football to the club after beating Dunfermline in the playoff final, seeing the Spiders in the second tier for the first time since the 1980s. Their first season in the Championship saw a close title fight with Dundee and Ayr United, which would end in them finishing third in the league after a 5-3 defeat at home to Dundee in what was one of the most incredible Championship games in a long time. They would be knocked out of the playoffs at the first time of asking by Partick Thistle, however, and for the following season they would slump down to 8th, avoiding the relegation playoff on the final day. During all this on-pitch success, however, they weren't playing games at Lesser Hampden, as it was still under construction. Ownership of Hampden had been transferred to the SFA by August 2020, meaning they had to play elsewhere whilst Lesser Hampden was built. During their League 2 winning campaign, they played at the Falkirk Stadium, behind closed doors due to COVID. Then in League 1, they played at Fir Hill, on a grass pitch that by the end of the season looked like the Somme. And their first season in the Championship was played at Ochilview, home of Stenhousemuir and, thankfully, AstroTurf. But their second season in the Championship was played at Hampden Park again. Well, on the 8th of June 2023, Queen's Park put out a statement saying how after the Scotland vs England game on the 12th of September, they'd be playing home games at Hampden once again, with the Scotland national team using Lesser Hampden as a training centre, alongside Oriam in Edinburgh. Leanne Dempster, who was the club's chief executive at the time, said, "While we continue our redevelopment of Lesser Hampden, we are happy to provide the state-of-the-art facilities to the Scotland national team as part of the rental agreement. I'm sure our fans and visiting fans will look forward to games at Hampden Park next season, and we are pleased to be able to support the efforts of our national teams in the process." Whilst I personally haven't been to Hampden for a league game, it isn't uncommon for people to complain about league games at the stadium due to the fact the stadium is only about 2% full. Before going professional, Queen's Park had an average attendance of just shy of 600, which, for a 52,000-seater capacity stadium, isn't ideal. So this new stadium should solve that issue, right? A smaller, more packed stadium is infinitely better than a large, empty stadium. Clubs such as Airdrie are a prime example of this, as they were affected by the 10,000-seater stadium rule. More information in this video that I made here. So, Lesser Hampden was planned accordingly with some room for growth. In 2018, when the deal was made, this is where I get to put my university course to good use and go through the Glasgow City Council planning portal and look at documents, which is exactly the nerdy stuff I am interested in. If we look at the timeline, we can see that Glasgow City Council received the plans to rebuild Lesser Hampden in December 2021, with the decision to go ahead, subject to conditions, being given in February 2022. In that time, Queen's Park had risen to the Championship and had an average attendance of 911, granted at Ochilview, so not exactly a representative figure. The 2023-24 season saw attendances rise to an average of 1,798 at Hampden, which is a huge jump in potential revenue, which sounds great until you realise that the planned capacity of the revamped Lesser Hampden, with the new stands that is, was 1,450. If Queen's Park were still in League 1 or League 2, this would be fine. But in the Championship, where every team had a higher attendance than 2,000 except for Queen's Park, about 1,800 as previously mentioned, and Arbroath, who were 12 shy of 2,000 average, it's simply not enough. That's not even going into this current season where, whilst yes, Dundee United have gone up to the Premiership and Livingston have come down, Falkirk have come up, and attendances at lower league clubs in general are on the rise. The planning of the redeveloped stadium also only has a south stand for away supporters and an east stand for home, meaning the north end is completely empty. The west side, meanwhile, which used to have a running surface, has been taken up by a director's box, which I have seen nicknamed the Gosh Shed because, look at it, along with an improved clubhouse. So with all of this available information put together, how have Queen's Park seemingly got this so wrong? Well, this is something that can be seen as subjective. Many people will have their own theories, going from sensible ideas such as the fact that Queen's Park don't have a lot of fans, hence the lack of capacity, to the conspiracy theories of Queen's Park deliberately building a training facility for the SFA to use. I'm erring more on the sensible side of this. However, I know not as entertaining as claims for corruption, but hear me out. If we look at the timeline of events, when the stadium deal happened, the club were amateur in League 2. When the planning permission was put in back in December 2021, Queen's Park were in League 1, having just been promoted from League 2 and were sitting 4th in the table. They managed to win the playoffs despite finishing 28 points behind Cove at the top of the table and 21 points behind second place Airdrie. If we look at the average attendances for League 1 in that season, aside from Falkirk, every club had less than 750 fans at games on average. In following seasons, outside of Falkirk and Dunfermline, average attendances are less than 1,200. It's clear looking at this that Lesser Hampden having its capacity of around 1500 makes it more than appropriate for League 1 and League 2, which means that it should be a non-issue. What they didn't plan for is the back-to-back promotions, because let's face it, finishing 4th, where you have to play a team from the division above, and a team that finished however many points clear of you in 36 games, doesn't lend itself to success in the playoffs. Clearly, they simply didn't prepare for life in the championship off the pitch, and whilst that sounds bad, when you consider they were amateur and then just turned professional during the planning stages, it sort of makes sense. What they have left undeveloped is the north end and the northern half of the west side next to the director's box. So, what can be done with this space? If we were to copy and paste the south stand onto the north side, that would be an increase of capacity by 500, and then take a third of the east stand to the northwest, that's another 500. Maybe even combine the stand with a little corner section to add, say, another 100 seats. If that is what Queen's Park were to do, if club's officials are watching this, then please wait until after I finish uni before hiring me and putting this plan into motion. That would bring the capacity to about 2,600, which, when considering average attendances for the championship, would be more suitable, as half the league would have a lower average attendance than the new capacity, meaning that tickets for games won't end up being put into some sort of lottery system, as we have seen already with games between Livingston and Morton. They sold out against Livingston, a team constantly ridiculed for their lack of support. This also means that whilst teams will be losing their opportunity to play at Hampden proper, it can be argued that there is the benefit of a better matchday experience at a modern stadium that isn't completely empty. It would also benefit the SFA in Hampden. With less dates of Hampden being used, in theory, there would be more dates for events to put on at the stadium, and outside of more Taylor Swift revenue, pitch maintenance would probably be easier, seeing as it's not getting played on every other week. Then again, who knows what Queen's Park are paying to play games at Hampden again. That's all for this video, and of course, I hope you enjoyed. What are your opinions and theories on the Lesser Hampden arrangement? Leave them in the comments below. Of course, liking, sharing and subscribing are all appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.